Hello, everyone. Welcome to our MSP Growth Gap webinar. Danny and I are just here giving a couple of minutes for everyone just to join in. I think can you see my screen, Danny? I think that's shared already.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Great. First time testing using Teams for webinars, because I think that was a more recent addition. I think people used to have to do it as a Teams call or something before. I'm used to Zoom, but we'll be loyal to Microsoft as a Microsoft house, as I know probably most of the people joining us will be as well. I think everyone joining us today is UK based. I think we purposely didn't market this across the pond, so I've not had to worry about our S's and Z's or pound symbols and dollar symbols as we often try to do to make things friendlier for our American cousins. We're 4 minutes past, almost 5 minutes past, are we? So shall we kick off, and anybody else that joins us can just jump in. Today we're going to talk through the funnel. For anyone that's seen our website would see that we bang on and on and on about the sales and marketing funnel, and it's something that most people kind of forget about, I guess, because the perception of sales for most MSPs is shaped by referrals, because that's how most businesses have grown. So there's not been the same history that many organizations have to go through to build that client base from multiple touch points over a long period of time. So that's what we're going to talk through today between myself. So those of you that don't know me, I'm the founder of Wingman. We're an MSP focused marketing agency based out of the UK. We look after MSPs around the English speaking world with the whole marketing, branding, messaging, lead generation piece. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Danny Boyle, my industry friend, also here in the UK, who has recently launched as a SalesPilot, taking his years of experience. We've known each other for a long time in the channel. And Danny feels the same passion as I for supporting MSPs with the sales challenge. So Danny, tell us, a bit about your history and what you're up to now.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me back on as well. I really do appreciate it. So, I've been in sales now for 20 years. And that's a combination of dealing with retail, face-to-face, telecoms, SaaS-based selling and coaching. But for the last 12 years of those times, I've actually been working with the MSP crowd, and that is for a large period of that time representing big, large vendors, some of which you may know, and also quite a few common UK distributors. So I'm now doing my own thing, and I specialize in sales outsourcing specifically for MSPs and just to be that helping hand for everybody who needs it.
Been around the block, same as me, and seen all the same challenges that the audience share. So what are we looking to cover today? There's quite a bit that we're trying to pack in, but a few key things between us that Danny and I will riff off of each other to hopefully add value to all of you that are actively doing sales and marketing your MSP right now, or are looking to make a new investment and adjust or pivot what you're doing to grow your business. So from my perspective, looking at the whole funnel and trying to bring together sales and marketing as one consistent engine. Most organizations historically, they're two very separate things, and it doesn't work if they are in isolation of one another. It's not a consistent series of events. So we'll talk through that funnel. How does it all connect up? And how does marketing feed and support sales? And Danny, I know there's a few things close to your heart that you're helping out MSPs with. What's key on your agenda today?
Again, just making people aware that just solely doing one of either marketing or sales will not fix growth on its own. Usually the handover between the two is usually where the revenue gets lost. So from my perspective, it's more just making people aware, giving people the education to be more often than not. The way I like to put it is marketing gets someone to raise their hand, sales discovers whether there's actually a business and a problem worth solving. So it's how we can connect the dots to make sure that everybody's always on the right wavelength.
Qualification there, yeah, being a biggie, I guess, in that marketing can't always achieve. But yeah, if you've got the qualification piece and numbers and going beyond that initial win, we'll touch upon all of those sort of key areas in that whole cycle. So on to qualification of that, sort of having that sales discipline, the foundations in the first place. Everything may be what a good sales or account manager should possess. Where do you start guiding MSPs on those sales foundations and how to qualify and leverage opportunities in the best way?
I think there's two angles here that we need to address. The first one is what it is that we're measuring, just to make sure that we're always, again, on the right path. I've heard it numerous times now, but marketing will always say that they've generated like 100 leads, for example. But if sales are only having 10 conversations off that pocket, nobody's actually wrong, but they're just measuring different outcomes and different successes and failures. So for a business owner, it's even harder to identify what is actually working and what's not. So straight away, the first thing that we always need to do is just to make sure that we're measuring the same thing. That way, again, everybody's on that right wavelength. That could be the suspect, the prospect, it could be the opportunity that we're trying to go for, the size, it could be the customer or the target market that we're trying to attract. But realistically, we need to get down to that even keel. Away from that, I've always had quite a well-structured sales qualifying process. I use the acronym called BANK out. There's a lot of other acronyms which I'm pretty sure most people will be aware of. You've got BAN, you've got RAPID, I think is one. But realistically, these are the 7 key details that all customers will need to harness at some point during the sales cycle from cradle to grave to fully and accurately qualify where a lead is at every given moment. So the BANK out that I use, the B stands for the budget. Now, obviously, historically, this is the one piece of information that nobody wants to give out willingly, purely because people automatically feel that it'll be used against them at a later time.
Especially us Brits that don't like talking about money.
Absolutely, mate. But that is just one element, and you'll probably find more often than not it's the last piece of the puzzle. But the A is for the authority. Now, what we're seeing now in the modern day of company structures is that there's multiple decision makers in this process. So it might be that you have to go through 2 gatekeepers just to understand if it's even got any legs to stand on. Then the N is for the need. So what it is that's causing them the grief, the strife, the problems, and how we can put that into layman's terms to take something technical and put it into an emotionally charged reason as to why customers go with that. The C is the competition. Who are we up against? You know, are we looking into 3 or 4 other different competitors? There's a lot of industries now where they need 3 tenders just to get full sign off. So it's really, really nice and wise to know who it is that might be in competition for what we're looking at. Then the opportunity size, how much of X, pretty self-explanatory, that one, how much of X it is that someone's looking to buy. Is it per node, per device, per units, per seat, per gigabyte? You know, the list is endless. U is why you are unique. Sorry, I struggled with that one. It's been a long day already. But yeah, realistically, there's usually 3 reasons as to why people would choose you. And it could be you as an individual, i.e. the member of staff who is being approached. It could be the company, and it could be the product. So it's really great and smart to understand which of those is going to be the leading position that the business can use to help with the negotiations moving forward. Because, you know, I'm pretty sure people still buy from people, and that is paramount, which is why word of mouth and referrals are so strong in the industry, and they always have been, and they're not really going to go away anytime soon, but we can't rely on that. So it's important to know why they are drawn to you. And finally, T is timeline. And again, this is another thing that Brits do struggle with, because historically we do not like putting pen to paper to say exactly when it is that we're going to be saying yes. We'll use diversion tactics, we'll use delaying tactics just to try and get more of the power of the sale. But I think, to go very long-winded, First of all, understand what we're measuring. Second, have a good structured qualifying process in place so everybody is understanding of what needs to be captured before a call is made.
And where would that fit into the sales process? So I know, shaped by our experience of supporting MSPs with lead gen, it's not uncommon, particularly for a busy business owner who, let's face it, with most MSPs is probably the person leading most sales conversations, and they don't have time to waste in inverted commas on prospects that are not ready yet. But the reality is that most people are not going to share all of those things with you up front, and B, because it's quite a consultative sales process, it might take weeks or more likely months to get to that point. So how would you say that fits in reality of when you think about a sales funnel, unless it's someone that is referred to you and therefore they're probably already made up most of their mind in terms of all the sort of buying decisions? How would you build that up over time to sort of nurture a prospect?
It's all to do with the touch points and being relevant at the right time. I've always been an advocate where you're not going to get all 7 points of interest on one call, because otherwise there's going to be no relationship. There's going to be no structure built in that call. It's just going to be a very, very short Q&A. And as soon as the customer cottons on that all you're interested in is the outcome and not trying to fix a problem, it will be cut short. But it is still important to hold these values dear, because it will allow you later down the line to understand if they are a tire kicker, if they are a buyer with intent. It really does help to justify and forecast where they're at in the funnel, in a nutshell. But yeah, from my perspective, it might take 2 or 3 calls to price this information out of a customer. It might take 2 visits, it might take 4 emails, it might take 5 email calls, but email transactions. But realistically, that's the reason why some sales cycles can take up to 90 days, even 6 months, because we live in a world where everything is not immediately signed off. We need to work on this, and having this as a backdrop and a skeleton to build upon, again, will help you to understand where the customer is at so that you know where to allocate your time best.
And I guess the system and the discipline and the mechanism, perhaps where marketing should fit in alongside that, is rarely is it clean cut that you get a lead through, and as you said, maybe 1, 2, 3 touch points and you're closing them. If they're in contract or other priorities come up and all of a sudden this project or requirement is put on the back burner, you need to keep them lukewarm or warm enough, at least, that you're remembered and you can reignite that conversation when that time comes back round again. So do you find that system, that process, the relentlessness, I guess, that is needed, that's where most businesses falter?
I'm a big believer in, and I mean, this is quite contentious and quite argumentative, but most deals aren't actually lost, they're abandoned. And it's quite a big topic, but realistically it is usually to do with the time and the follow-up. With MSPs, they have a duty of care to be always proactively looking out for the customer's best interest. So the last thing that they want to ever be is to become a nuisance. And whenever any particular customer is interested in whatever product it might be, they might try once, but usually they will let the end user to be left to their own devices to fend for themselves. And if it comes in, great. But realistically, I do see a lot of MSPs working on quite a low conversion rate because they've done all the hard work and then they either choose to ignore following up or just don't have the time or knowledge to do it correctly and make sure that touch points exist, and they exist for a reason. One of the guys that I'm sure everybody will know, Jordan Belfort. He's the Wolf of Wall Street guy, obviously massive film made after him, but he has a theory called straight line selling, which is every single thing that we buy will always go from point A to point B. Now, during that transition, everybody will go on a very individual roller coaster. So there'll be peaks and there'll be troughs all along the way. It could be a 30-day cycle, it could be a 60-day, 90-day, you name it, but the same process exists. There is a process that goes from A to B. So what the job from an MSP's perspective or a salesman's perspective, when they've got all the right information, is anytime the customer's on a high, keep him there. And anytime that he starts going down a trough and going on the wrong direction, it's usually because an objection or a priority has changed. So this is why it's really, really important to maintain full visibility, regular check-ins, make sure the understanding is there, the offer is repeated, so that you can do everything you can in your power to bring them back up to a positive outcome. And then hopefully, in theory, if you do that well enough, and it's probably going to take 4 or 5 opportunities to do so, you should see the end outcome in which you deserve, or at least upgrade your own conversion rate.
I like that. Yeah, and I was just going to throw in, you said about the sort of religiousness, I guess, of the process and the knowledge, but also the confidence, I think, to do it.
Yeah.
Where MSPs will be typically passive in their approach because they're advisors, and the industry is not by any means has any snake oil salesmen in it. Really, there might be a few of them around, but certainly not many. That taking that passive approach, kind of lacking the confidence to assert yourself with a prospect and follow up, can usually be one of the biggest obstacles, I find. So it's kind of finding that routine with yourself, giving yourself the boost to know when to reach out and how. And I guess you probably often see CRM and those reminders and structure, and maybe now even blending sort of AI into the mix to try and make that process easier.
Absolutely, yeah. It's difficult because, especially in nowadays industry, there's a new AI being spun up every day. So it's really, really hard to understand like what actually is a need to know and a need to have product and what's a nice to have product. So I would just home in on what you guys do best, which is your support, your care, your attention. I would just turn it up a notch. Less of the just checking in, just following up, and just get more decisive. Where do we stand? We've been speaking about this for a little while. Get a final answer. If a lead's been dragging its heels for a certain amount of time, it might be 2 weeks, might be a month, where you've just not heard anything. Again, we brushed upon it before, but the British way is to ignore people until they give up. One thing that I always resonate with is when we have and go to a restaurant, for example, if we have a positive meal, then we are likely to go back and talk to and recommend it to 2 or 3 customers. When we have a negative meal, then 1, we won't come back, 2, we'll be quiet, and 3, we'll then go and gossip and actually tell 8 to 9. So the odds are already against us. So when you're checking in, just make it relevant, make sure the touch point is there, check in if everything makes sense as part of the quotation that you've used, and try and use your voice as much as possible. In the written format, depending on the mood that the person's in on the other end, they can misconstrue this in multiple different ways. So sometimes your email might be clear to you, could be completely foreign to somebody else. There's a famous sentence, which is, I forgot, it's a 7-word, it's a 7-word sentence. Oh, I never said she stole my car. And this has been like studied in universities, but basically if you change the emphasis on every single word within that 7 word sentence, you change the whole meaning of the sentence. So I never said she stole my car. I never said she stole my car. And that's the whole theory. As much as you can use your voice, that's definitely going to be the most powerful route to market.
I've not heard that one before, but I like that.
Yeah.
I guess that's the challenges of the English language, maybe. That it's hard to get that across in the written word, and maybe where AI has crept in and it can save time, it also takes away the personality maybe can make things a little cold. And of course, as we always bang on about with MSPs that are going out and marketing AI, when we talk to prospects, is that AI is only as good as the context that you give it. So if it doesn't know you and your personality and your phraseology, and importantly, maybe some of those success stories and wins and impact statements you said, Danny, there about not just re-emailing people to say, oh, I'm just checking in and following up if you got my email, and all of those typical sort of nudge statements, trying to sort of be gentle or passive aggressive about it to nudge people. But if you can feed them with value, you've got sales assets and tools, testimonials, case studies, ideally video, that you can constantly feed to people. You're following up in a way perhaps that's giving them more value in every touch point, rather than just prodding and poking for the sake of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always like to use email as a receipt. So once the lead's been generated and created and you're actually in that full flow, I really do think that all of the value and the proposal and the pitch should come from the voice, should come from the opportunity where you can talk to them. Because if there's any immediate objections, and you can start reading the room and actually understanding where people are at, engage it for yourself just by body language. But I will then reiterate and send an email which confirms exactly everything I've just said, so it's all transparent and there's no hidden agenda, there's no smoke and mirrors, it's just exactly what you said. So for me, I try and do, again, just reiterating the point, I try and do as much as I can on the phone and then use email as that validation piece afterwards.
Yeah, that makes sense. So something else that I know is close to your heart is the numbers, and kind of, I often approach it from a reverse engineer the numbers of working out where do you want to be, how many extra seats do you want to win, how many or how many percentage points do you want to grow your revenue, and then figuring out that reverse engineer. Danny, I know you're having this conversation with people all the time, and you speak about conversion rates. What do you see, and maybe explain some of the methodology we've got on the slide here around the numbers?
Absolutely. Yeah. Reverse engineering is where it's at. We need to understand a few regular items first before we even start growing, because it's very easy to say we need to grow. But we need to put a methodology to the madness. So we need to work out what our average deal size is. We need to understand what our win rate is. The average sales cycle, is it taking 30 days? Is it taking 60 days? Is it taking a week? But realistically, we need to understand that, because that makes a pivotal difference in what you guys can deliver when the customer says yes, and also how many meetings are required for us to actually get that particular success call that we're after. So I work with a lot of MSPs, and they do always start with the same process of, we just need to grow, Danny, which is great, but you can tell there's not a lot of thought or process that's gone behind that. They just see overall that we need to grow. So what I like to do, yeah. And so what I like to do is just to go and emphasize the conversion rate. So in the industry, most companies will average in anywhere between, I would say, 20 to 30%, but as a easy bracket, we usually just say 25% conversion rate, and that's qualified opportunities. So if any MSP wants to grow by one company per month, then realistically, you need to have 4 qualified opportunities in your pipeline per month. Now, in order to take a customer from an unqualified status to a qualified status, usually we see a success rate in 20% of those going from early interest to deep qualifying, which we talked about before. So if you want one customer per month, you need a pipeline roughly of 20 opportunities. The 20 then gets converted from unqualified into qualified. That would leave us with 4. And then the 4 with the 25% success rate based on everything going right and all the touch points being there will lead us and land us with one customer. And it's important to know as well, because a lot of companies, when it comes to onboarding customers without it affecting the workload, staff morale, or the reputation of the company, will only be able to handle probably at max 3 onboarded customers per month. because usually there's a couple of teething issues, there's a couple of grey areas which we need to iron out after they've joined on in day 1 to day 14. So I think if we keep it as simplistic as possible, and which is why marketing is so strong, they can really help the sales team to understand and know what we are trying to achieve out of this. But yeah, one company a month, roughly 20 leads in the opportunity is what you'd be looking at in order to get any type of regular success month in, month out.
And I know that might frighten a lot of MSPs when they start to think about those numbers getting bigger and bigger the further up the funnel you get, to think where are those opportunities coming from, and that starts to lead us on to what is a lead, and thinking about the formation of that top of funnel to get us anywhere near a qualified opportunity. And for me, the word lead is almost a bit of a dirty word in the MSP space, because I think everyone has a different perception of what is a lead. And from my perspective, I cut my teeth as a salesman, in 3 MSPs over about a decade, and because I was entirely focused on sales and I earned my income from largely commission, I was driven to engage anyone that vaguely looked in my direction, to have a conversation with them. And there's always a fine line to not appearing desperate. But I remember my first MSP, I won a client that my boss had previously lost when he switched several years earlier, because he didn't feel the hunger from the business. He wanted to feel hunger, for his new business, as though we really wanted him, and he didn't feel that attraction before. So I was keen to give that across and try and win his business where we lost it several years earlier. But typically, as I see it from an MSP owner's perspective, a lead is often considered as a referral, because that's how most grow, where perhaps they're already 80-90% convinced someone that they trust has said, you need to work with these guys because they're doing a great job for me. Therefore, the rest of the job that the marketing and sales engine as part of the funnel should fulfill is already done in the inferred trust that's come from the person that's referred them to you. And I know if salesperson, or whether it's a marketing agency or whoever is generating leads for that MSP, they're looking at, or maybe not officially, but they're looking at kind of qualification criteria to think, is this an opportunity that's going somewhere yet? And often it's not, because they are further up the funnel. There is less brand awareness. I've been referring to it recently as a trust thermometer. And if they are cold or barely lukewarm, you've got to have X number of magic touch points. It's quoted as 7 or 24 or whatever it is now. All these different books quote different things, but you've got to take them through those steps over the course of weeks and months, to warm them up, to get them to the same point that a referral is when they first make contact with you. So I think that's where there's always ambiguity around the word lead, and we so often refer to them as conversations. Really is really where you want to get to. And Danny, what you were saying about bank out sort of criteria, when you have that first conversation, you're not ready to even get most of that out of them yet. Maybe there's some hints around things like budget. If they have an incumbent right now, chances are there's a budget there, unless the incumbent's really not charging them very much. They already have an expectation of what they need to pay and how the service works, because they're already paying someone else. Maybe if it's the very first time they're taking on any managed services, then that's probably a bit more difficult. But any anecdotes from you, Danny? How do you see leads, and whether that differs again from your perspective, as a salesman for years, versus businesses that you've worked in, and business owners, especially in MSPs that you've worked with?
Yeah, the biggest difference I see is a lot of people do mistakenly compare prospects to leads. Going back before I entered into the MSP space, I used to work for a large British telecom company. I'll let you put 2 and 2 together as to who that might be. But yeah, we were given like lead lists every 2 weeks, and basically it was a glorified phone book. and you start talking to people and it's very clear that they've shown or stressed no interest whatsoever. It was completely cold. And that misled me into misunderstanding what a lead was for several years. And it's only when you actually start to educate yourself and just understand what people do measure, and that it does circle back to measuring the right thing and making sure everybody's on the same wavelength, which does make a big, big difference. But yeah, the touch points is huge. And I do like the idea of calling it a conversation because ultimately we are building trust, whether that's trust on you, the company, the product, or all three. There is an element in that being absolutely a priority, which is why when you are reaching out to everybody and taking them through the cycle, using the qualifying process as the paramount skeleton to refer to, you are ultimately building a story. You're setting expectations. You're making sure that you're not a one-time guy. A lot of people in sales, unfortunately, through to bad practice over the last 20 to 30 years, have always been burnt somewhere down the line where as soon as they put pen to paper, that's it. They're never heard of again. They don't have an account manager. They always have issues. They don't hear anybody. Your job is to basically build that complete story as to why they're choosing you.
Interesting. So where I said there about a lead is someone, perhaps from a salesman's perspective, that vaguely looks in your direction. But actually, if you are working at the top of funnel there, which you were with that phone book effectively of people that you've got to reach out to, they are icy cold and there's no engagement at all. So that really isn't a lead. But there's some kind of happy medium maybe between a list of people that don't know you from Adam through to someone that already has a high level of intent because they're referred to you by someone that they trust. There's going to be a big mishmash in the middle and people are going to be at all different stages really.
Yeah, and also as well, just very quickly on that, it's just as important for you to have this process in place because you're ultimately vetting your own quality as well. Not every fault is down to the MSP not being able to manage a sale from start to finish or a lead from start to finish. We get customers coming our way because they've mistakenly identified that we can help in a way that we can't. So the lead has to close. There's tire kickers, there's time wasters. This is why it's really paramount just to have a clear-cut vision and stick to it because sales is maths, if you want to put it bluntly. If you look at the conversion rate being 25%, if 3 customers say no, back to back to back, it will allow you to be less emotionally charged about the reasons why and fixated on the problems, and instead just look at it as a graph. We had 12 people, 3 of them said yes, therefore we are running on the exact same rate that we should be. So I think it will allow you to take the emotion out of the cycle and maintain full visibility on why we are doing this.
Yeah, I like that. It's hard when it is so emotional, especially if it's your own business. Then we can all take it. Or even if you're a salesperson employed within an organization, it's easy to take it very personally when someone doesn't go ahead when you're the one that's been pitching to them. So to kind of map this to a funnel of steps. This was our funnel that we sort of adjusted recently. Everyone's probably seen a funnel of some kind, whether it's in a book or in a CRM that they've used over the years. But by and large, most of them are the same. I don't think this is certainly unique to MSPs. As you said earlier, between A and B, everyone goes through the same sort of buying journey. But how we see it for MSPs, those referrals there coming in, as sort of highly qualified opportunities in most cases that are nearest damn it to a close. They're your business to lose, really, because of that inferred trust from the third party that steered them to you. That it is wildly different to a lead that comes in at the top. So the very first step here at the top of the funnel is arguably not really part of the funnel at all, but it is narrowing down the people that you want to talk to, the ICP, or ideal customer profile, who fits the demographic that you usually serve based on size, industry, geography, or nuances in their organization of the way that they work, the regulations that they face, anything that you can try and tie together of a lookalike pool of businesses that you can go and tell a story to because you've solved challenges similarly in other organizations that look and feel just like them. That's where your cold outreach starts. Whether that's someone stumbles upon you online because they Google something, or they see a social media post or an advert, or you send them an email campaign. Until they actually engage with that, and perhaps on a regular basis, not just a one-off, are you actually going to develop any level of awareness at all? Brand awareness is such a woolly, fluffy term that a lot of marketing people use and is hard to quantify. But if you're able to see a growth in the number of people that don't know who you are because you don't do business with them right now, and you're able to build points, maybe have a point scoring system within your CRM or marketing tools that you use to track the engagement, whether it is email, visits to the website, phone calls, presentations, attendance at events, you're able to build up the number of points that these people acquire by engaging with you regularly. That's generating those, what in the sort of marketing and sales world are often called MQLs, marketing qualified leads. It's as Danny said earlier, someone's put their hand up and they've said they're vaguely interested in something. That's where you can spot intent. Does someone demonstrate enough intent because they have attended a webinar or an in-person event, or they've clicked on a series of emails, or they download an asset of some kind from your website? They are demonstrating a level of interest, possibly a light level of buying intent behind what it is that they're doing. Their actions sort of speak louder than words, that they're showing you that they might be moving towards looking to solve a problem or looking to acquire a solution. And then that's often, at least for me, and hopefully you agree, Danny, where often the handoff between marketing and sales starts to come in, that someone has demonstrated hopefully enough intent that there is a reason or an excuse for a salesperson to reach out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Customers continue buying because trust continues growing. It's one customer journey, not two departments. So this is the perfect opportunity for both departments to be in sync. And absolutely everything you said, Dave, is just nailed on. Yeah. Couldn't fault it.
And then through those conversations, and perhaps this is where marketing should continue to support, because you may be able to speak once and you haven't got the right person, or they're not interested enough yet because everyone's fearful, especially again us Brits, of being sold to. That maybe. What would you say are the sort of key steps at that early stage? We don't know enough yet about the prospect because we've not met them. We've not had an intimate conversation of any kind. We've only seen that they visited the website, they've engaged with some content, maybe they've attended a webinar. What are the sorts of tactics that should apply at that point for a salesperson, and how do you see that marketing could support that?
Well, marketing creates a familiarity as to why people are like coming our way. It's so, and there's no doubt about it, the sales benefits massively when the prospect already recognizes the company. So if marketing can do a lot of the heavy lifting with the education behind the work, and then sales can create that voice of contact and voice of trust. So between the two, it should be a very nice working formula. But again, it just goes back to the stage where you need to have people prepared to take the call and to reach out at the right time. I've worked in companies where they had a 5-minute SLA, where any time there was a lead that came in through the website, within 5 minutes we were tasked to ring. And the reason being and behind that is because there was some stats somewhere that we read upon where it carried an 80% success rate to get right through to the person. So you could argue that the faster that you can act upon it, the better reward and the better reaction that you're going to get, because we all live in quite a busy and hectic world. So if it becomes a second priority for you, it's very likely to also become a second priority to that end customer as well. So yeah, I would just say act upon it when the marketing is hot, because it should have a much more damning effect that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah, timing is everything, isn't it? Especially when I think back to my MSP days of nothing like a disaster to actually encourage somebody to act on something. And often I'd speak to someone who hates their MSP right now because they've been offline for 2 days, the communication's bad, there's an impetus to act because they are experiencing pain right now. But often that pain then over the next 2 or 3 weeks eases as soon as the IT's okay again and the problem has gone away. So you've got to strike while the iron's hot, but then kind of maintain that communication with them when inevitably by the time you get to meet them, you get to put a proposal under their nose. Often that the impetus to act starts to ease off as they get distracted by other priorities. So we need enough awareness with them, I think, to probably compel them to act.
Yeah, and there's a very large chance as well that if they are stressing interest, it is because there's something very serious underlying it. And no one usually looks elsewhere if their life is good. Something has to trigger in order to generate interest elsewhere. And I've seen it myself hundreds and thousands of times with just ongoing active leads that I've been working. Unless you're making a significant difference to their day-to-day life, they're not going to take interest. If it's a slight improvement, it's not going to be exciting enough to take that leap and to take the risk and make the jump across. So if they've generated a lead, an interest, usually there's a, not going to swear, great reason why.
Yeah. And pain, isn't it? I guess everyone everyone puts these barriers in place of why am I going to switch? Why am I going to go through the pain and hassle that I perceive it's going to be, even if the reality is very different to want to switch. So yeah, you're right that it's got to be mega compelling.
Yeah, and keep them talking about their pain as well. Sometimes we do have a tendency to sell on fear, and I'm pretty sure that you've seen this in the industry an awful lot, where what would happen if, how much money would you lose if?
Yeah.
I've never really been the biggest advocate for that. I feel like it's endangering on crossing the line. But if you can just have a nice conversation and just figure out what it is that's causing the customer a little bit of grief, and then allow them to emphasize on it and to dig deeper, like, the MSP we've been working with for a while just doesn't reply, and it takes ages. Like, really? Like, when the last time that you had that, how long? Just allow them to relive that really horrible moment and the painful moment, which is why they've generated and took the effort and the time to stress interest elsewhere. That should be absolutely a big you should be capitalizing on it as soon as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just to recap, and by the way, we'll send the slides to anybody that wants them post webinar today. The steps through the process, as I mentioned from the top, of figuring out that audience, the ICP, driving awareness through multiple touch points of leveraging content, topical, timely content based on the nature of the business that you're reaching out to, whether that's an industry niche or it's a particular size of organization, complexity of organization, or it's leveraging topical themes right now, such as AI. Everyone with AI is solution aware. They know that they want the solution. They don't necessarily know what they have in terms of problems for it to fix. But if you can be the one there with the answers, you're addressing sort of FAQ that they may go online and look for help with these certain things, then you're seen as a subject matter expert. And leveraging case studies and testimonials through that will just strengthen your storytelling. If they're real world stories, they're not AI generated, they're not off the shelf, they are curated messages from your real lived experiences. And there'll be a lot within your team, especially technical teams that are delivering service and projects for clients all the time, will have those experiences. It's just sort of interviewing them informally and getting a download from their brain as to what were the problems that they saw, what were the options that they went through, what did they implement, and how did it help. And then anyone with a creative brain can then turn that into material that the prospects can engage with. Get that material under their nose frequently enough that you can then show some answers to problems, and people will then show their hand by creating intent signals by visiting your website, clicking on emails, attending and engaging with events, and then weaponize that to turn it into a conversation where they will let their guard down because they start to trust you as an individual, whether that's the business owner or you're a salesperson representing your organization. The fact that you've delivered some value can create some value in an emotional bank account, as we often call it, where a prospect feels as though they owe you something if you've been helping them out, giving them answers. And then with that lowering of their guard, and they start to share an opportunity with you, they tell you about a specific problem or requirement that they have. You then have the opportunity to be the advisor and you help someone to buy, rather than it actually being true sales. And you said about fear selling there, Danny, and you don't need to do that if you've already got someone on your side that's listening to you as an educator and see you as a problem solver. That most good sales is helping people to buy rather than actually strong arming someone into buying double glazing, for example.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that comes quite nicely to, after a sale is made, why account management is so pivotal and required, because it will basically replicate the same journey as the early interest that you will go through in account management as well, just continuing to build that truth and the trust, using marketing to obviously help to re-engage the customer into other areas of the business that you're trying to grow into. Yeah, it's just an everlasting circle.
I just jumped over the slide here where you mentioned about sort of beyond the win of looking after that customer beyond the pen to paper, when most people, we've all done it, we've all been customers, we've all signed up for something, when we then feel sort of unloved once we've actually signed up and the salesperson's disappeared. So that account management piece, but there's also maybe a greater sales opportunity that comes from the long term, that full LTV of the lifetime value of a customer to an MSP that can come from that account management piece, that you're almost selling by continuing to be that advisor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of times that I've been working with MSPs over the years is they will actively choose to ignore this section. Because the customer's paying and they don't hear anything, usually it's a case of, well, it doesn't matter, that's not a priority, let's focus our attention elsewhere. But you'd be incredibly surprised how much you can boost things like referrals. You can boost other areas like cross-sell and upsell. A lot of the MSPs I know have still got customers to this day who have been with them for up to 20 to 30 years, who are on the same old historic and legacy contract that they've been on for the last 20 years, and they're petrified of putting the price up. Through education and trust and determination and just staying in contact with the customer in a proactive management and a proactive fashion, you would have had ample opportunities to slowly move the needle and get the customer much more closer to where you want them to be where they're at. And unfortunately, if you multiply that across 30 to 50 to 100 to 200 customers, it just amplifies to a much higher degree of potential misrevenue. There's no guaranteed science in that, but account management has been my bag for the last 10 years. And all the big boys are doing it en masse. They see a very big value in growing existing company money and revenue to another degree just by having good old chats and just making customers aware of what they have at their full disposal and their full portfolio. Unfortunately, customers are not going to have enough time in the day to try and educate themselves on that, so it's over to you to do the work.
And that can be delivered sort of in a an under the radar perspective. With there's a lot of talk around QBRs and SBRs and that kind of terminology of regularly meeting with clients to understand what's going on in their business, what are their priorities, what are they changing, perhaps more than some organizations. I know I usually say to MSPs to maybe steer away from doing a ticket review and talking about KPIs and things, because maybe those numbers only matter if there's a performance problem. You want to be talking to the client about their business and their priorities. And I know I hear this quite often, maybe Danny, you have too, of MSPs that say, I struggle to get in front of customers. They don't want to talk to me about that stuff. They don't get why I want to go and see them. So you have to sort of manufacture that reason to get in there and get them to share things with you that otherwise they wouldn't proactively share. And maybe often they share it when it's too late, that they've made a decision on moving property and they've not thought about getting any Ethernet cabling done or whatever. And then it turns out to be a mess when they say to you weeks later, oh, can you move our server and come and do all the IT stuff? So you've got to be in there as the advisor, being seen to be proactive by the customer, but also the customer seeing you as a proactive advisor, not just the insurance, not just the company they call when things breaks.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is why account management is so pivotal, because just being in touch with customers regularly will allow you to start reading between the lines. Unfortunately, we live in a world now where if somebody is ever considering a competitor, they are more likely now to sign the contract and then let you know than give you an opportunity to try and fight for that custom. And you mentioned it before, too little, too late. Unfortunately, if you're not staying regularly, staying in contact with your customers on a regular basis, you are leaving certain elements to fate. And just having an active call when it's proactive, not reactive, it will allow you to read between the lines. You mentioned QBRs, but the problem with QBRs is it's too systematic. You might want to reach out to this customer a lot sooner than when your next meeting is. So you can go down the route of gap analysis calls are used very regularly at the moment. Discovery calls, that's a new word for gap analysis call, but ultimately it's just having a full review of the customer just to see what type of grey areas you might be able to fill. Another thing that I'm seeing more often than not now is a customer satisfaction review. Purely again, because we're British, we've got more of a tendency not to say everything's okay. But one of the reasons why it's proven to be quite powerful is if you can proactively link that to a good referral scheme, subconsciously you can actually nudge people and twist their elbow a little bit with some of your best customers to actually do a lot of the hard work for you. So if you have absolute critical evidence that they are happy, they're over the moon, everything's going perfectly, why not use it? The worst that can happen is no, and they say no. So why not say, oh, I'm not too sure if you're aware, we do have quite an active referral scheme. Let me tell you a bit more about it, because most company owners will familiarize themselves and be in somewhat connected to other company owners. We always like what we are in. So more often than not, if you get into one, there's a very high chance you can get into many. And if you can do that through word of mouth on top of the sales and the marketing effort that you're doing, it should be a very, very nice triangle of attack that you've built for yourself.
And to kill multiple birds with one stone, if you can get those customers to engage with surveys and provide that feedback by making it as easy as possible for them, you can then put those testimonials on your website, in your proposals, in your marketing material. And if they're someone that's fanatical about your service and you've got a great relationship, try and get them in front of a camera. There's nothing better than video testimonials you can put on your website, or even get them to leave a Google review, which even employees within your customers can do, because they're leaving it as themselves as an individual. They're not commenting on behalf of the business, and Google reviews are really important for that initial trust piece when someone is searching online, and even to help feed SEO, to tell Google that you're a legitimate trusted business that's been around for a long time. So just wanted to throw that in there as an extra bit that you can really seep as much value from a marketing perspective as possible out of that customer engagement.
Absolutely.
To jump back a step here just before we close, we're getting close to the end now. Thank you for everybody bearing with us. The trade-off when it comes to investing in sales and marketing, especially for MSPs that have tried marketing once, we hear that quite a lot, that they've done a short-term campaign, a small burst of investment, maybe in nothing more than one or two tactics, rather than having a holistic plan, a mapped out sort of series of events that are going to happen over a prolonged period of time. Wherever or however you're going to try and achieve that, you've got to find the time or money effectively to be able to execute. And whether that's following your own model, every MSP is effectively an outsourced service business. So whether you follow that and you partner with people like us to outsource and bring in that expertise, whether it's a marketing agency to help support your lead gen and your brand and your awareness and drive events and that intent, and it's in a sales capacity to help you be able to execute the professional proposals that address the problems, the mechanics of following up on that, the CRM, the numbers. Maybe you've got a sales team that are not hitting their numbers or they need some steering. Whether you bring in that resource from outside or you recruit dedicated personnel yourself, be it in sales and or marketing, or you do it yourself if you are the business owner or one of the owners and you've got limited time, you've got to spend that time or money. And for some business owners, we often like to play devil's advocate and we'll ask, are you the right person to do this? Because often if you are a technical person, it may not be your forte. It might not be your comfort zone. So, play devil's advocate with yourself. Ask yourself, ask your team. Does anyone like talking to people? They like solving problems, not going for the hard sell, but being relentless. There is a driven element to it to continue to follow up with people. But I would say you've got to have that point of reflection on, do we have the time, resources and budget to make this happen for the prolonged period of time that it takes to see that return on that investment. Danny, anything that leaps out to you there when you're having these initial sort of conversations with people about the resources and where they're going to invest their energy?
Yeah, I mean, the big grey area is always to do with hiring, because it always comes down to which angle people go down to, sorry, I'll refresh that. So it always comes down to hiring. Do you get someone new and hope they become a gem, and you're willing to put in a lot of time and effort and patience to basically mold them to be a mini you? Or do you go with someone who's experienced, who's going to cost a lot more, who's going to obviously demand a lot more in regards to like rewards and obviously a ladder and like maybe even like going down the route of becoming a director at some point so that they have certain expectations. One thing that I've always noticed when I used to work in the large British telecom company, the most important feature of any interview process when we were hiring was to ask the question at the end, just tell me something that you're passionate about for 60 seconds. That was paramount, the most important question that they focused on, because if they can take you on a story based on what they're passionate about or why, the theory is at some point that's going to be your offering, your solution, your customer service, that's your ticket, and so they can take a customer on that journey too. Unfortunately, with AI, everybody in regards to interviewing and also with CV building, everybody is an expert relatively overnight now. So they all know what to say and how to say it, and they all know how to make the most beautiful of resumes. So it's even harder to find that right person who's going to fit the mold. So just be careful. But if you are after someone who's customer facing and you're looking into the hiring process, I would try and lean into them as a person and being able to hold a conversation, because absolute theory is they're going to be able to use that same process and same skill set when it's your product or your service or your representative. That's pretty much.
Or using as I weirdly found out, and I interviewed somebody, maybe it was about a year, 18 months ago, had his laptop open at the interview, and we were asking questions, and then he would sort of type something, and I'm pretty sure he was cheating and trying to get ChatGPT to actually do the interview for him. It was one of the most surreal interviews that I've ever done. That we kind of had to cut it short and tell him to go away
Yeah.
in the nicest way possible.
Yeah.
It was very, very strange.
And it even happened to me though as well. You probably remember Rick Yates, one of my old bosses. But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he always tells me a story of when I actually interviewed to jump into the MSP world for the first time. He was like, "Oh, what's the best bit about yourself?" And I basically went, "My personality." But then I went on to actually tell a story and just talk about my life in a bit more detail, and that's when the true me came out. But again, in another day, I might not be sat here right now. So it's just always worth looking between the lines just to understand the person on a deeper level rather than what they're saying. Focus on how they're saying it and how they're delivering it.
So, ever mindful of the time, we're about coming to the end. Some quick takeaways of where to get started, and you would say maybe even Danny, before people can get to investing in sales and marketing, maybe look at your existing customers and think about the account management piece, whether you have hired account managers within your staff or not. Start with a bit of white space, a bit of development with those customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And just get full visibility of the sales cycle. When a lead comes in, actually track what happens. I've seen a lot of situations where people will just simply put pen and paper and it sits there on a desk until they next remember to watch it. Or they'll log an email and their their inbox is like literally one of 3,500 emails. Just think about the system of how you can keep on top of people in more detail. And then, yeah, use the white space to understand what the next step would be.
Yeah. Three key elements then to prep to get on with sales and marketing in your organization. Knowing your numbers, as we've said, know what your closure rate is. Look at those cold leads, not just referral leads. So you manage your own expectations of what's realistic out there in the marketplace. Be honest with yourself about your resources. Are you the right person to do the sales? Who else do you have in your team? Who else can support you with that? Do you have a young, enthusiastic tech that you want to keep in the business for the longer term? Are they open to the challenge of working on some sales with you supporting them? And that time and money, that investment piece, if you've got your account management squared away first, and you've got the foundations, the process, the system, and you know your numbers, it's much easier when you go out there and start spending some real hard cash on generating leads. You've got the mechanism to capitalize on the opportunity that will come through, and knowing all of your readiness for that. We've had so many businesses that come to us looking for a lead gen solution because they need that new business coming through the funnel, but then often miss the other steps. They're not ready as soon as they have a lead. What are they going to do with it? How are they going to present? What's their proposition? Is it competitive? Do they have the success stories to build the trust to be able to actually close the business that they've invested so much time, energy, and money into bringing into their pipeline, if they don't have the rest of the tools and mechanisms in place to be able to win that business? So thank you very much for everyone that joined us today. Danny, if anybody wants to get in touch with you for sales coaching, for their team, for themselves, for account management, how should they get in touch?
Yep, you can visit dbsalespilot.com. Ultimately, you can also just find me on LinkedIn, just type in Danny Boyle and send me a private message and I'll be happy to arrange a call. But I do have my calendar on the website as well, along with my pricing and what it is that's available for me to get involved with.
And if you keep them up these days, I don't know if I've seen as many anymore, but if you're partial to the odd dad joke, then Danny's got a stream of those on LinkedIn. So he's well worth connecting for that, if nothing more. Otherwise, we are Wingman MSP Marketing. If you want support with your messaging, your positioning, your proposition, your website, or to generate leads and work on that whole funnel, get in touch with us, Wingman, mspmarketing.com. We will email out the slides to everyone that attended today. So thank you very much again from us for attending. If anybody has any questions, we can hang around for a couple of moments. Unless you've got to run, feel free to drop them in the chat or just get back in touch with us when we send out the slides.
This is where the awkwardness begins.
Well, I don't think we've been hit with any questions, actually. So maybe we must have delivered such strength of information that nobody asked questions, or they were just bewildered from what we were waffling on about. So thanks very much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoyed it. Thanks, Simon.